Hello. First, I want to thank to the organization committee for inviting me to give this speech. And through the morning, we have listened to very valuable speakers, learned a lot, and I've seen that we in Turkey, as the Pardus project, try to do more or less a bit of more or less everything mentioned up to this point throughout the morning. Pardus story started. Let's try this. In 2003, the Office of Prime Minister asked the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey, which is a government agency for which I work, to study the feasibility of a nation operating system, developing a nation operating system, and if feasible, to project it. We spent a couple of months, maybe 3, maybe 4, to find what will be the main points in developing such a nation operating system. The institute I work for, National Research Center for Cryptography and Advanced Electronics, has technological independence, national security, and savings within its vision statement. And these 3 items were among the things why the Office of Prime Minister asked us to work on this. But we add 3 more things. One of them is the local know-how. We want to be productive, not only users. Second one, high value-added production. We want to produce things which have high value-add software at the upper parts of the stack, software which can be sold for high amounts. And thirdly, we want to control the roadmap of the product. We don't want other open source or proprietary vendors and producers to implement the features we want to have in the software, but we want to do it by ourselves. This is a consistent vision. It's not that clear. It was not that clear at that time whether the feasibility is there or not, since we just jumped into the production. I may say that it's not clear whether it's feasible or not right now, but the way to go open source is for sure the best way. Since now we have 3 parts of the strategy. We just made the strategy in a year's time. We want to have an open source distribution which is popular in Turkey and maybe in around the globe. We want to have a sustainable organization. We don't want this to be a cost center all the time. We don't want the government to spend money in developing this thing all the time. So we want to form an ecosystem, a software industry around the project, and we want to make technological innovation. We don't want to make the localization only, or we don't want to make the service and support only. We want to put some technology in there as well. And what makes Pardus different then? Now there are something like 400 Linux distributions. Some of them are very important Linux distributions, Red Hat, Enterprise Linux. We have heard about SUSE, Enterprise Linux. There's Ubuntu. We all know that. By the time we started, Ubuntu was not around. What makes Pardus different than the 300-odd software Linux distributions around? I have a couple of points. First, the government funding. Most of the distribution projects are either community or a single person or a group of person. We have government funding behind Pardus project. We have a professional development team. It's not only volunteers. It's not only individuals who are into open source software. We right now have 30 plus full-time developers team, and it will be something like 50 plus hopefully by the end of this year. I quote unquote professional, since these people are open source enthusiasts as well. They believe in open source, they believe in freedom of software, but they are working for my organization full-time. We aim at technological innovation. We want to find what is not working with Linux distribution and try to solve those problems. Pardus is mostly a desktop-based Linux distribution, so we want to make it more usable, easier to install, easier to use, a Linux distribution which is useful for people on the street, not just by geeks or not just by computer professionals. We have a user base different than most of the Linux distributions, very much like the enterprise Linux distributions we've heard of, which is at the enterprise level using corporate work. And the project is business oriented. It's not just produce Linux distributions, put it out in the market, and whoever likes it will use it. We try to build a business model and ecosystem around the distribution. Now, if we look at how it's proceed in time, started in 2003, charter statement from the Prime Minister's office. Oops, it just went through the animation, which is very important. Now, we started, we put out our first product early 2005, which was a live CD. By the end of 2005, we had our first installable CD, and since then we had more or less annual releases, part of 2007, 8, 9, and very recently 2011. We had some upgrade releases, in between releases, and these kurumsal means corporate. We have 2 releases for corporate users. They have a larger period, something like 3 years. So we are good at producing software, producing Linux distribution, and what's in it? We have KDE 3.5 and KDE 4. KDE 3.5 for the corporate product, KDE individual use product. We have our package management system, different than RPM, DAB, or similars. We have PC. And these the things you see on the screen are the software developed by my team. That is what we have done to make this thing more usable, easier to use. This is the technological innovation we put in there. Right now, we don't have many distributions making use of this thing, but very many people around the world look at Pardus and they say that it's a very nice distribution. These are the snapshots from different reviews around the globe for 2007, 2008, 9. I guess a couple of them for 2011. So Pardus name comes from the Latin word for Anatolian leopard, Panthera pardus tulliana. So the word, there's a new cat in town, there's a new Pardus in town. So it's a nice distribution. Very many open source and Linux users around the globe like it. There are user groups in the Netherlands, in Italy, in India, in Poland, in Sweden. It's possible to use Pardus in start and use Pardus in 13 different languages and so on and so forth. But let's look at the metrics, whether it's feasible to do this, whether it's valuable to do something like this. And we use Ohlo numbers. These are a bit old numbers, I guess, by early 2010 or by late 2009. It tells that the code base of Pardus, the things that we write, we put in there, aside from the upstream Linux, OpenOffice, Firefox, whatever there, is something like 32 million US dollars. And by that time, we spent something like 3 to 4 million US dollars into this thing. So we put 1 and we got 10. How we did this? We use open source. If we try to do this from scratch, it will cost us something like $2 billion or $10 billion, depending on which study you believe in. But if you use open source, if you transfer the technology that's available with some free software license, then you may have something like 1 to 10, 1 to 100, 1 to 50 ratios for the value that you get for the money you spent. This is the code base. It's going very healthy. These are the developers. both people working for TÜBİTAK and people from community volunteers. So it's a healthy open source project. Are anybody using that? Yes, indeed, not too much in number, but in Turkey, Ministry of Defense is making use of Pardus in 7,500 clients in 600 locations in Turkey. Higher Authority for Broadcasting is using that for the largest video archive in Turkey, or maybe one of the largest ones around. Energy Markets Regulatory Authority is putting full enterprise software stack on Pardus and open source. So it's not a science project as it shows on the caricature here. It's a business, as I said at the beginning. This is not an academical project. This is not an R&D project per se. This is a business development project. So we have to have a business model. And the business model is as follows. Public money for the public good, ecosystem for the business. This is the very short summary of our business model. We have heard about public good. Part of Pardus is public good. We create this thing and put with GPL license. Anyone in Turkey, anyone around the globe may take this and make use of that for their specific purposes. We use the money from the Turkish central government to develop this distribution. Public money for the public good. For business, for Ministry of Defense, for Energy Markets Regulatory Authority, for other government organizations and private companies and armed forces in Turkey, we are in talks with for different projects. They are their private goods. They are their specific needs that should be put on top of this product, and this will be done by us and by the ecosystem. More importantly, we want to have channels for this ecosystem, for hardware, for software, for system integration, consultancy, support, training. We want to have, right now, mostly smaller companies, but in time, larger and larger companies, and we want to have an open source economy in Turkey. Right now, building around Pardus, but in time, Pardus will be part of this economy. Beforehand, the Turkish open source economy was very tiny. Right now, it's getting larger and larger thanks to Pardus and thanks to projects that Pardus carries out with these government organizations you have seen. One of the channels is what we call Pardus Migration Partners. If you're a government organization or a public company and want to go from the proprietary software to open source, Pardus Migration Partners bring you the know-how, the best practices, quality assurance, and it's possible to scale the extent of Pardus and geographical spread of Pardus through these migration partners. Right now, they are mostly startups and smaller companies, but in time, we expect to have larger system integrators of Turkey become Pardus Migration Partners. We don't want to, we are a research institute, so we don't want to do routine work as the Pardus team in TÜBİTAK. We want to make more innovative, more interesting, more exciting work. So migration is mostly a routine work, and we want our partners to take care of that, to make money out of that, to get larger companies and new companies coming into the market. Some flow with my LibreOffice usage, but it's a very important word. Let us stay there. We have we from time to time have hardware partners and software partners. We call this works with Pardus. It's very important for end user reach. If you buy a PC, you want to have the operating system pre-installed on it. You don't want to pay for the operating system. Go out, find some DVD or download some ISO image and burn that on a DVD and install it by using very complicated procedure. In Pardus, it's a simple procedure, but still it's a very complicated procedure. In order to have reach to the end user, you have to have your hardware partners, and these hardware will come with built-in support. You don't have to support, or the community does not have to support the end user. End user will be supported by the hardware company. You have some quality assurance there, and you have the legal software. As mentioned before in Lemlin case, we have the so-called pirated software in Turkey as a very important problem as well. If we have enough number of hardware partners, the alternative of proprietary or pirated proprietary software will be open source software, Pardus. Now we are working very serious on Pardus training centers, our training outlets, our training partners. Right now we have some joint programs with Department of Education. We're training we're training the trainers, as was the case with one of the speakers, I guess in Lebanon, if I'm not right, forgive me. We're training the trainers, we're training the teachers, and teachers will go to their schools and train the teachers around them, and they will train the students, so it will be a chain reaction like that. We have certain levels for different certification, and we're working with existing IT training companies so that we don't have to invent a new business model for this thing. Okay, this is more or less what I want to talk about. These are the places that you may find some more information regarding Pardus, but I will spend some couple of minutes on transferring the experience we had, the things we did right and things we did wrong, which may be more important than these factoids, the presentation that you have seen. I have 6 points for the things that should be very seriously examined before and during starting and executing a national program like this. First one is finance. You have to have enough money, and you have to have that money whenever necessary, just in time. If you don't have the finance, then you may start very nice and smooth, but you will go into some problems as you start growing. You will not be able to grow as the demand grows. We had been through this stage, and it's very important. For government-based projects, for ventures, private ventures, for startups, every time you have to be sure that you will be able to grow with the demand. Otherwise, you'll go into some problem. The team is very important. The number of the people working on the development and the capacity, the capabilities that you have in the team is very important. And this goes to the existing open source community and the capability of the existing open source community in your country. That if you don't have many kernel developers in your country that within the reach of your initiative, you will go into some problems if you do something related to kernel. You may look at the capability around you, and you may build something on top of that. We did not have much problem in this respect, but as the team grows, we had some hard time recruiting correct people. Product is very important. The word product is very important. You have to go start at the beginning thinking that we are going to have a product. This is not a project, this is a product. As the calculator says, this is not a science project, this is a business. This is not a project, this is a product. You have to think about all the things attached to this product. If you miss one of them, if you miss support, if you miss documentation, if you miss training, if you miss one of the aspects that is necessary for this thing to become a product, then you will fail. We have few very important successes in this respect. Novasusa is one of them, Red Hat is another one, Ubuntu is becoming a third one, but we have very many failures where people go like an open source project and could not make the transition to become a product that, if you wish, sells on the market. Community is very important. Community in the sense that individual developers, community in the sense that ecosystem companies, you have to help them. You have to build the community up some point. You have to finance them if necessary. You have to support them if necessary. Don't expect the community to come to you. Go and outreach the community, help them, educate them, train them. For example, for some projects, we outsource the things that we may very well do to our ecosystem companies, since they have to be successful and they have to grow so that the ecosystem, a healthy ecosystem builds on top of that. Users, one point about ecosystem, universities, schools are a very important part of your ecosystem, since the graduates of these schools and universities will be IT professionals, and they will form either your volunteer individual developers or professionals at the IT companies that form your ecosystem. You have to work with the universities. You have to, again, help them, train them, collaborate with them in order to make them capable in open source, and in order to make them graduating people's capable in producing, developing open source. In Europe, we see such success stories. In Europe, in several companies, Germany is one of them, France is another one of them. Most of the university graduates in computer science, computer technologies do know about open source, have been used open source, have very important experience in open source, and when they go to the companies, proprietary or open source, they want to work with open source products and open source projects, and that is the reason why Europe is more smoothly moving towards open source as compared to other places. And that's the same for the emerging markets as well. That's more or less the same in India, in Brazil. We have seen, we have heard about that. Work closely with universities. Don't forget about your users. Awareness is very important, but you have to listen to your users since you are producing a product. I again emphasize, this is a product, and you have to somehow sell this product to your user. Don't be a stubborn open source developer. Don't put yourself in the shoes of your user. Ask your user and listen to what they say, and if necessary, modify your product according to your user's need. And the last thing is about policy. We have heard about this thing in the morning. It's very important. It's one of the very important missing parts in Pardus. Now, in Pardus, we have the product, more or less, a successful product, the organization necessary to develop and support this product. The ecosystem is building. Everything is very fine. We're trying to listen to community. We're trying to listen to the user. But the point is that the government who ordered this Pardus thing do not have any policy to encourage, not mandate, but encourage government organization to use open source, Pardus or otherwise. On the supply side, they're supporting Pardus by say couple, 3-4 million US dollars a year. But on the demand side, they're not doing anything, and they're spending tens or hundreds of millions of US dollars as license fees to proprietary software companies. You have to, from the first step, as one of the first steps in your initiative, you have to think about this, and you have to have close ties with the policymakers. And when your product ready, it's much better to have some policy which supports the use of your product than the other way around. So if we go again, finance, team, product, community, user, and policy. These are the 6 success factors that may make your national initiative a success or a failure. Okay, this is all the time that I will use. If there will be any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks a lot.